started. Hari Om. So I'm back in Bangalore for this and the next satsang, and so I have JV sir and Geetanjali here with me. Okay, we'll get started with invocation prayers.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धदामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रीकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्तोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम्। लोके षड्जनषट्परैरहरहः पीपीयमानं मुदा भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुरुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. So we are revising chapter 2 today, and we will revise the first half of chapter 2. So Swajanam, Swa is my and Janam is people. So Arjuna was in that state where he is saying my people, Swajanam. And this comes from Aham and Mama, the sense of I and mine. When I and mine prevail, objectivity is lost. And when objectivity is lost, there is loss of efficiency. And this then results in poor performance. And now look at Arjuna, the world's at that time the best warrior, and he is not even ready to perform. Forget about performing poorly. And when that happens, then sadness and delusion arise. And that is an inner virus. So, our first, remember the sadhana after chapter 1, identify sadness and delusion, shoka and moha, and quickly get rid of them. Now Bhagavan will talk about Swadharma. Here also there is a Swa, my. But here it is my dharma. In this context, when Bhagavan talks about Swadharma, he is referring to my duty. Swadharma is my duties. Now Swadharma cannot be performed to perfection if there is the sense of Aham, Mama, which then leads to Shoka and Moha, which then leads to Swadharma Paripalada. Paripalada means something that should be there is not there, is missing. What should be there is not there, is Paripalada. That then leads to dereliction of duty. When there is that concept of my dharma, my duty is not there, then the duty does not get done. And that is nothing but Swadharma Nasha. So now Arjuna is on the brink of dereliction of duty. Swadharma Nasha. And that is the situation where Bhagavan starts Sankhya Yoga. Now, yoga is that which is the means. Upadaya, the means. Yoga means the means. It comes from the root yuj, and yuj means to be united. The means by which one unites is yoga. In Arjuna Vishada Yoga, sorrow is the means. Sorrow and delusion are the means through which Arjuna unites with Bhagavan. Remember, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, as Krishna is already his friend. But here, Arjuna actually unites with Bhagavan as his student. Sankhya means knowledge. And Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives knowledge as the uniting means, as a solution to this Arjuna problem of Shoka and Moha. Now, chapter 2 is said to be a summary of the Bhagavad Gita in prospect, in anticipation. Something that talks about what is going to come, like a preview. A summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita in the beginning itself. In Sanskrit, this is termed as Vastu Sangraha Adhyaya. Adhyaya is the text. Sangraha is collection. A collection of whatever is going to get covered in the upcoming book, whatever will get elaborated. So Bhagavan first, when he starts talking, covers what he is going to cover in detail. So now we have, in the Bhagavad Gita, we have come up to chapter 5. You will find in chapter 2 that Bhagavan is touching upon some of those concepts that we have covered. Now Sanjaya describes what happens with Arjuna in this situation. We will go to the first verse of chapter 2.
Sanjaya uvacha tam tata kripaya vishtam ashrupurna kulikshanam विषीदन्तमिदं वाक्यम् उवाच मधुसूदनः
Kripaya avishtam, overcome with compassion, pity. Ashrupurna kulekshanam, eyes full of clear tears. Clear tears. Tears are clear when they have been flowing for a long period of time. Initially, when tears come, they are not very clear. They are salty. Clear tears, which means he's been crying for a period of time. Vishidantam, he is despondent. To him who has or who is thus overcome with pity and is filled with despondency, who has his eyes full of tears and is very agitated, Madhusudana spoke these words. Now, again, another beautiful use of Krishna's, Bhagavan Sri Krishna's name, Madhusudana, destroyer of the demon Madhu. The demon Madhu came from the earwax of Bhagavan Vishnu. When Bhagavan, it is said that Bhagavan Vishnu was in Yoga Nidra. And when he was in Yoga Nidra, through the earwax, see, Madhu comes from wax. Madhu is what? Honey. It comes from bee wax. That is the reason for the name Madhu. From the earwax of Bhagavan Vishnu came two demons. One of them was called Madhu. And they did lot of penance. And finally, Brahma appeared before them and asked for, what do you want? And they said, we want immortality. That means we can never perish, never die. And Bhagavan said, immortality for your being is not possible, Brahmaji said. And they said, fine, in that case, we will die when we wish to die. And then they just created havoc. They had that sense of power, that arrogance that comes from that kind of a boon that they have got. And the worst of all of them, they stole the Vedas also. Madhu stole the Vedas. And finally, all the gods went to Bhagavan Vishnu and said, you know, you have to save. Even our Vedas have been stolen away. So then Bhagavan fought with the demons, defeated them. But then remember, they have got a boon from Brahma, that they cannot die. They are imperishable unless they wish to. So after defeating them, Bhagavan asks Madhu, please grant me a boon. Now I have defeated you in battle. Can you please grant me a boon? Madhu is overwhelmed, you know, absolutely elated. Both of them actually. But here Madhusudana, overwhelmed and granted Bhagavan the boon. And Bhagavan said, please give me your life. So intelligently destroying evil with intelligence, using intelligence. And we will come to that use of intelligence in a bit also. So when Arjuna was in this state, Sri Krishna came to the rescue at a time of great peril. And when Arjuna's intelligence had gone to sleep, everything for the Pandavas could have been destroyed. And not just for the Pandavas, for the subjects of the land, because there was absolute tyranny out there in those days. Dharma would have taken a huge blow. It would have been compromised to a very large extent. And Sri Krishna now acted upon to protect Dharma. He could have done this in various ways, but he chose to protect Dharma by protecting the good and destroying the evil and re-establishing Dharma. And he talks about it later in verse 8 of chapter 4. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So he will refer to this. And now he acts to protect Dharma by protecting the good. And how does he do it? We will see how he does it. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha. Shri means reverential, worshipful. And Bhagavanu Vacha, Uvacha, the worshipful Lord said. Before we go to what he said, let us spend a few minutes revising what we talked about. Who is Bhagavan? Why is this term use of Bhagavan? We are not saying Sri Krishna Uvacha. Like we say Arjuna Vacha, Sanjaya Vacha. We are not saying Krishna Uvacha. We are saying Bhagavan Uvacha. Van means persistent. It indicates the continuity of what is there. permanence of what is there. Like Dhanavan, Vidyavan, Van comes Dhanavan, someone who has accumulated long-term, who's wealthy continuously. Vidyavan, someone who's knowledgeable continuously. Knowledge resides with that person. It indicates Nitya Yoga, permanence, Nitya. So much is there that even if something goes away here and there, it does not have any impact. Like remember, we used the example of in these COVID times, markets have crashed, and every now and then markets crashed. But does the wealth of Mukesh Ambani have, does it affect him? Does he feel any difference? So much. Dhanavan, in that little bit has gone away. How does it matter? And Bhaga means, in a literal sense, Bhaga means prosperity. And in the context of the Lord, it indicates certain aspects, which then represent prosperity. These are 6 in number. And there is a small shloka that, talks about these 6 number. That is, Aishwaryasya samagrasya dharmasya yashasriyaha vairagyas attamokshasya shannam bhaga itingana. So samagra means persistent, full, complete. And what is persistent, full, complete? The first thing is Aishwarya. Aishwarya is lordship, the power to control. Bhagavan controls everything. The second is dharma, virtue, nobility. The ability to retain the identity of why you are who you are. Always. Yashas is the third. Yashas is glory. We all sing the glory of the Lord. The fourth is Sri, wealth. Wealthy in all aspects. Richness, strength, knowledge, all aspects. The fifth is Vairagya, dispassion, non-attachment. And the sixth is Moksha, liberation, never bound, unbound. And these are the Shannam, the 6. Bhaga implies all aspects, continuing all aspects. Van is continuing. Bhaga is all these aspects. Itingana, they are there. So the 6 aspects of prosperity that the Lord is always ever endowed with. The persistent, continuous presence of all these traits is Bhagavan. We notice all these traits in human beings also, but they occur in pockets. When it is continuous, when it is ever there, then we say Bhagavan. And such a Bhagavan spoke. And thank God, he spoke. He could, like we said, he has Aishwarya, right? Control. He could have controlled Arjuna's mind. He could have controlled the entire war. He could have in a second acted upon and done whatever he wished to achieve. But he did not do that. He spoke. And he spoke the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And thank Bhagavan, thank God he spoke, because that is why we have Bhagavad Gita Satsang. And not only did he speak for Arjuna's benefit, he spoke for everyone's benefit till date, till today. The relevance of what he spoke is amazing. And we can see that, we can experience that. So yes, again, thank you to Bhagavan. So the intent of Bhagavan we see is to teach this and let this knowledge be there for centuries, through the yugas. And how did he speak and what did he start speaking with when he addressed Arjuna? The ever compassionate Lord, how did he address Arjuna? He was very firm. Misplaced compassion, is not good. Compassion is great, but misplaced compassion is not good. It artificially clouds a message, which then prevents the person from receiving the message. The softness is not in place at that time. It should not be there, and it is there. And it also prevents from the other person understanding what is implied to be said. I often tell my people in my team members in my company. I say being nice does not always mean being good. Just because we are nice doesn't mean we are good. As a leader, as a worker, as a manager, whatever we may be. And that Bhagavan, Sri Bhagavanu Vacha. We will go to verse 2.
Sri Bhagavanuvacha Kutastva Vishame Samupastitam Anadyajushtama Akirtikaram Arjuna.
Let's recite verse 3 also.
Klaibhyam masmagamapartha Naitatvayupapadyate Shrudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Yaktotishta Parantapa.
So in his very first utterance, remember Bhagavan has been patiently listening to Arjuna, like we said, like the best psychiatrist. Let Arjuna pour out whatever he had to pour out. Had been patiently listening to him. And then in his first utterance, he blasted. After allowing him to vent completely, Sri Krishna has blasted Arjuna. And he has used extremely strong words, no sugarcoating. So let's see what all he says. He says, Kashmalam, Kutasta. From where? Kutastva. Kutastva, Arjuna, from where? Vishame, in this, now, in this situation, you're facing in the middle of the battlefield. You only asked me to come here. You're facing the enemy, the conches have been blown, they are ready to shoot at you. And here in this situation, from where? From where did you get this kashmalam, this dirt in your mind? From where did you get this anarya, ignoble thoughts? Asvargyam, thoughts that are excluding the higher state, the state of heaven. They prevent you from reaching the higher state. Akirtikaram, thoughts which are disgraceful. Klaibyam, thoughts which indicate that you're importance. Na uppadyate, they are not fitting for you, Arjuna. You, the warrior, Gudakesha, not fitting at all. Shudram, they are also petty, they are mean thoughts. And Hridaya Daurbalyam, they show the weak-heartedness that you are currently in. And after this dressing down by Sri Krishna, Arjuna understands. He kind of wakes up a little bit and he understands that he is confused. He has not got any solution yet. He just gets it that he is confused. That's his intuition, the gut feel, that there is some kind of an inherent contradiction within him. He was the one who told Bhagavan, take my chariot. He ordered Krishna, take my chariot to the middle of the battlefield. I want to inspect. And now look at him. So there is some contradiction, the same person within a few minutes. So he understands, his intuition says that there is some turmoil within, there is something which is not gelling. Two opposites within him. And that confusion, that contradiction, he recognizes. And what does he do now, or what he does now, is very important step for people as they progress on the spiritual path. And what is this next step that he takes? This is such a step that if a human being does not take when there is confusion, when there is disturbance within, if the step is not taken, then there is a chance that that confusion deteriorates to a point where you're forced to take this step. So this step is not voluntary. If it is not voluntary, it becomes inevitable. Either it should be voluntary or it becomes inevitable. And this step is to seek guidance. The combination of sorrow, delusion, sorrow, the shoka and the moha, and the jnana, the understanding, the knowledge that I am in sorrow, I am deluded, that knowledge forces action. Only delusion, if it were there, can lead to postponement. You keep deluded people can keep postponing all the time. But sorrow creates a sense of urgency. And the knowledge that yes, there is something wrong, there is some contradiction, that leads to that step of action where you go and seek help. And this is called Guru Upasadana. Upasadana, approaching, Guru, teacher. Everybody does it. My favorite example when I talk here, Federer. Even the best of players, whether it is Virat Kohli in cricket, whether it is Federer, they employ a coach. Why do they do that? They are so good. They are the best in the world. They employ a coach who can step away because they are so much into their game. Somebody who is out of the box, who can observe them and guide them to do even better. Samachara. So even when you are absolutely firm, even then a coach is good, a teacher is good. And especially when you are completely in the state of breakdown, it is a must. Guidance is a must. Now, reaching teacher, asking guidance is a very good thing. But to be able to receive what the teacher is saying, that requires certain qualities. To be able to maximize the benefit of what is being taught, that requires certain qualities, however good you may be, whether you are broken down or whether you are Federer. To be able to understand what the coach is saying and then employ it, deploy it to maximize the benefit requires certain qualities. And these qualities are called Sadhana Chatushtayam. And what are these sadhana? Sadhana is the effort, the qualities. Chatushtayam, fourfold qualities. The first of the four is Viveka. Viveka is discrimination. Discrimination between what is permanent, what is everlasting. Remember, we talked about it when we referred to happiness. Long-lasting, everlasting. What is permanent? Nitya. The discrimination or difference, the capability to identify what is permanent and what is temporary, what is ephemeral. That is Viveka. The second is Vairagya. Vairagya means dispassion. Dispassion towards what is not permanent. Dispassion towards what is ephemeral. Otherwise, passion towards the impermanent can lead to Viveka also getting destroyed. So, the being detached, being dispassionate towards what you know is impermanent. The third aspect of Sadhana Chatushtayam is Sham Adi Shatka Sampatti. Sham Adi, Sham and more than Sham. Shama. Shama is beginning with Shama. Shama is control of the mind. Then there are 6 of these. Shatka Sampatti, good possession, good qualities. Shama, control of the mind. Dama, control of the senses. Uparama, willingness to give up distraction. Even after controlling the mind and senses, the outside object world will keep throwing distractions. The willingness to give them up. Then Titiksha, you have controlled your mind, you have controlled your senses, you are willing and you are willing to give up these distractions, but then things happen which are completely beyond your control. The forbearance to deal with those things, the patience, the endurance, the fortitude, that is Titiksha. And then Shraddha. Shraddha is devotion, faith. And the 6th is Samadhana. Samadhana is the ability to focus, concentrate. And the 4th Sadhana Chatushtayam is Mumukshutva, the desire for liberation, desire for moksha, desire for ultimate freedom. So when you have these qualities, that is the time we are able to receive and retain and take benefit from what the Guru is teaching. If these qualities are there, then knowledge becomes experiential. It is not something that we have heard. Otherwise, you can sit in a class and hear whatever the teacher is speaking. But experiencing it, that requires these qualities. And that knowledge that comes through experience is called Aparoksha Jnana, direct knowledge, which we have seen through our own eyes. Bhagavan will keep referring to this. He says Drishta, Drishtva, Drishta, that means I have seen, I have experienced. Vijnana, that becomes Vijnana. If that is not there, hearsay, indirect knowledge is Jnana or Paroksha Jnana, which I've heard, but it's not something that I relate to. When you relate to something is when the Eureka experience comes. And that Eureka experience is Aparoksha Jnana. And now Arjuna, having realized this, he seeks that guidance. And we'll see how he seeks that in the next verse, 7th verse.
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यश्रेयस्यानिश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
One of the beautiful verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and one which is very relevant to us because we need to be again and again and again practice to be in this situation. Karpanya dosho upahata swabhavaha. My nature has been taken away or destroyed by self-pity. Prichhami tvam dharma sammuda cheta. With a mind confused about duty, I ask thee. Yachre yashyan nishchitam bruhitanme. What is surely and permanently good for me? Please tell me nishchitam, decisively. Shishyasteham shadi mam tvam prapannam. I am your disciple. Teach me. I surrender to you. I surrender to thee. So Arjuna says, I really want to do what is good. Not necessarily what I want to do, but what is good. And that is where I am confused. I don't know what is good. So please, Bhagwan, you please teach me. And not only that, you tell me decisively, something which is permanently good. Arjuna also keeps asking this. We saw in chapter 3, chapter 5, and when we did chapter 5, we saw the difference between Arjuna's question in chapter 3 and every time he says, Bhagwan, tell me decisively. Shadimam, instruct me. Prapannam, I surrender to you. Now this is a game changer. The attitude of surrender is a game changer. Swami Chinmayananda ji says, he who submits to discipline is a disciple. Submitting to discipline is a very difficult thing. To check yourself. So Arjuna says, I don't want to do what I want to do. Please tell me what is good. And even if I don't want to do it, I'll do it. Karpanya dosho upahata swabhavaha. Karpanya dosha, fault, that has affected his whole being. And what fault has affected his whole being? Karpanya, deep misplaced sense of compassion and self-pity. Karpanya dosha can also be taken to be the weakness of a miser, a kanjus, kripana. And why miser, kanjus? Because who is a kanjus? Who is a miser? A person who says mine, mine, I, mine, aham and mama. So when you are so deep into aham and mama, you are a miser. And that weakness that comes from being so deep into aham and mama is karpanya dosha. And this kind of a narrowness, looking at everything from my and mine perspective, is contradictory. That is what Arjuna is facing. It's contradictory to what? See, the body, mind and intellect looks at that aham mama, aham mama, aham mama. The spirit itself, the self, the soul, that is vast. That is all giving. That is free. So this constriction versus the free giving vastness, that is a conflict, which often occurs among all of us. And having recognized, that is why this is so crucial to us in today's world also, because this is there. This conflict is always there. The body, mind, intellect comes with the aham mama. Our spirit, our fundamental spirit, look at children, they are so giving. They don't think about it as mine. They are extremely giving. But as we become adults, we get more and more possessive about what we have. And that conflict between the free-spirited soul and the restraining, constricting body, mind, intellect troubles us all through. And this teaching of Bhagavan is a solution for that. And for that, we have to recognize that conflict, recognize that disturbance. And having recognized this, Arjuna asks for a decisive guidance on a solution that is good under all conditions. Nishchitam Shreyaha. All conditions. If the environment changes, the solution should be still valid. It's like saying sugar is good for a child. You can have more sweet, but if you have diabetes, it is not good. So can there be some sugar which is good for everybody at whatever age? That kind of a solution, which stands good under any environment. So an interpretation of this situation in which Arjuna is also, another interpretation is very relevant for all of us. Arjuna represents the Jiva, which is all of us, the Jiva. Jiva is nothing but the body, mind and intellect. He is standing between the good and the bad forces. In the middle of the battlefield, on one side are the good forces, on the other side are the evil or the bad forces. Like we are ever torn between the good and the bad. Oftentimes in our life, we are torn between the good and the bad. So many situations in our life bring forth this good versus bad. And Arjuna, the Jiva, completely surrenders to the Lord, Bhagavan Sri Krishna. And this Bhagavan Sri Krishna is there within us as our pure consciousness. So when we recognize that we are torn between the good and the evil, we are in the middle of our own battlefield, on one side good forces, one side evil forces. If we surrender to our Bhagavan, that Bhagavan will surely guide us. So chapter 2 has 3 parts. Section 1 is up till what we have reached now, up to verse 7, which is the Arjuna surrender. That is section 1. Section 2 consists of the logic or reasoning by which one comprehends the true nature, comprehends the absolute reality. And this is called Sankhya. And Sankhya is from verse 11 to verse 37. And reading and learning of this Sankhya, understanding this knowledge, through it we get elimination of all sorrows. And what kind of sorrows? The sorrows that come from grief, grief that comes from attachment, attachment that comes from aham and mama. And how does it do that? This section has two more parts. The first part of this section deals with Atma Vidya. It does that by revealing the nature or the Vidya, the knowledge of the Atman, the nature of the self and the body also. First the body and then the self. Bhagavan first, from verse 11 to 30, Bhagavan will talk about the nature of the body and then the nature of the self. And it removes Atma Moha, the delusion that is there regarding our own nature, because of which we identify so deeply with the body, mind and intellect. And that identification leads to grief. And he does that by giving Atma Jnana, knowledge about the self. Once we have Atma Jnana, that removes Atma Moha. The second section deals with Swadharma Vidya, which is the nature of the Swadharma, the individual's duty. And that is from verse 31 to verse 37. It removes Swadharma Moha by giving Swadharma Jnana, delusion regarding one's duty. What should I do in this situation? What should I not do in this situation? By giving the Jnana, it removes the delusion. And the section 3 is from verse 38 to 72. Today we will cover till verse 37. Atma Jnana, Swadharma Jnana. And 38 to 72 is called Yoga. Through that knowledge, through the knowledge of yoga, one attains perfection in action and equipoise under extreme circumstances. The section that primarily deals with Atma Vidya is called Sankhya Yoga. the one that gives Atma Vidya, through which Atma Moha is removed, is called Sankhya Yoga. And the section that primarily deals with action perfection is called Buddhi Yoga. And all-knowing one, Sarvagyani, Govinda, all controlling the Aishwarya quality, Sarva Shakti, Rishikesha, he then starts his teaching. And what does he do? Bhagavan Sri Krishna starts by bringing clarity that one should not identify with either the body or the self or the mind. In verse 12 and 13, he talks about why you should not identify with the body. And in verse 14 and 15, he talks about why you should not identify with the mind. And he essentially says, it is not that we were not there. This is the beauty of Sanskrit here. I'm not going into that verse today because we don't have, this is a revision and we don't have time. It is not that we were not there. And it is not that we shall not be there. Which means what? Which means we were there earlier, we will be there in future. The self was there earlier, the self will be there in future. And we'll talk about it a little bit here. So one who has discovered that herself and has a mental equipoise, a calm endurance, that person is fit to attain this knowledge. And Bhagavan now continues. We'll go to verse 16 now.
नासतो विद्यते भावः नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्ता त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः.
Sataha is Sat. Sat means that which always exists, the real. And Asato means Asat, that which is non-existent. Most of the quote-unquote existence that we see around us is limited. Science also tells us this. And it is limited by what? It is limited by space. It is limited by time. It is limited by the physical constraint, the object. Desha, Kala, Vastu, Parichinnaha. That is limitation by Desha, Kala and Vastu. Space, time and object. And Parichinnaha means limited, constrained, conditional. There are conditions which are bound for its existence. And anything that is limited by space, time, and object is unreal. The body, mind, and intellect are always limited by all the three, not by one. They are limited by all, the body, mind, and intellect. Na bhavo, that which is limited, is absent. That's what Bhagavan says. What cannot be shown independently, which is dependent on space-time object, is apparent, is mithya. And Bhagavan says, Tattva Darshibihi. See, Darsha, Darshibihi. The knowers of the truth, the seers of the truth. Tattva, truth, Darshibihi. The one who has seen the truth. The one who has seen the truth, know that kind of knowing, not because somebody else has seen. Last time, if you remember, I gave the example of Mount Everest. Someone has gone there, someone has measured and says, Mount Everest is the tallest feature on the planet. I don't know. I'm believing because someone has written it in the book and someone has possibly measured it. But if I see it myself, then I am Tattvadarshi. So that seer, the one who knows because your experience through your own, on your own, through your own experience and sight, that person can effectively distinguish between the real and the apparent. And ubhayo, of these two, of what two? The real and the unreal, the sat and the asat. Drishtontaha, one who has seen. That which was not in the past and that which will not be in the future. But that which seemingly is there in the present is called unreal. What is non-existent in the beginning, what is non-existent in the end, but is apparently there in the middle, is also non-existent in the middle. And it is nothing but an illusion. Like when we go to sleep and when we have a dream, when we are in the swapna avastha, it is extremely real at that time. But before we slept, it was not there. After we wake up, it is not there. So the dream itself, even though it may have seemed so real, it is actually unreal. And to have this kind of a changing environment, a changeless substratum is required. For example, a river bed, which is firm, is required on which the river flows. If the river bed were also flowing, the entire earth is flowing. If you see an avalanche or if you see, flood, then everything is moving. But when you see a beautiful river flowing, it is on top of something which is stationary. Similarly, for all this change to happen, what was not there in the beginning, what is not there, there has to be something which is changeless. For this body, mind, and intellect to go through this, not only for it to happen, but also the body, mind, and intellect to have a wholesome experience, that self is the changeless substratum which is behind the body, mind, and intellect, based on which this experience, the mitva, the experience, the samsara, that takes place. And that is the self. And Bhagavan continues in verse, we'll go to verse 90.
Ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyati hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate.
So what the self holds together everything else. And now Bhagavan says, one who thinks of the self as the hantaram, as the slayer, and one who thinks of the self as the hantam, slain, one who can kill and one who is killed, that person, vijanito nayam, that person does not know, he knows not, because the self does not slay and the self, nor is the self slain. Now for Arjuna and in his context, Bhagavan uses the words hantaram and hantam, slayer and slain. In general, for all of us, and it will become apparent when Bhagavan continues his teaching. Bhagavan addresses Arjuna and he addresses everyone till date. It is all activity. Whether we are speaking, whether we are listening, whether we are doing, whether we are drinking, whatever it may be, all that activity. So one who thinks that the self is speaking, the one who thinks that the self is listening or the self is not listening, that person does not know. And Bhagavan continues in verse 20.
Na jayate mriyate va kadachi nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah ajo nitya shashvatoyam puranah na hanyate hanyamane sharire.
Na jayate mriyate va kadachit. Kadachit means never. Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. Not being there, will be there, not again. So let's understand this. The body, mind, and intellect paradigm, that goes through 6 modifications. It keeps changing, right? We talked about the changing paradigm on top of the changeless substratum. This changing paradigm goes through 6 modifications. These 6 modifications are called the Shadvikaras. The Shadvikaras are, the first one is Jayate. Jayate means is born. The second is Asti. It exists. We exist. The third is Vardate. It grows. Fourth is Viparinamate. It modifies. I had no hair, then I had black hair, then I had white hair, gray hair, then white hair, now no hair again. It modifies. Apakshiyate. It decays. And finally, Vinashyati. Mriyate. So Bhagavan says, Na jayate mriyate. So the rest of the 4 are covered, are enveloped, are included by these two extremes, born and die, birth and death. Birth is not being there and then coming into being. Death is being there and then ceasing to be. And Bhagavan says, never was the self not there and then came about. Nor was the self there and then went away or ceased to be. He says the self is existent before birth and it is existent after death. And therefore, the self is not killed, na hanyate. When the body is killed, hanyamane sharire. It is unborn, ajaha. It is eternal, nityaha. And it is changeless, shashvataha. Even though it is ancient, it is still new, purano. Pura api nava, purano. Pura api nava iti purano. Something which continues to be new even though it is very old. So death of a previous condition and birth of a new condition is change, is nothing but change. When things change around us, my boss used to say constantly changing pace of change is the only constant. So the death of a previous condition and the birth of a new condition. The person that I see in the mirror today has not remained the same, like I just described. The hair in the head, the wrinkles under the eyes. It's not the same. I can see the modifications. But who sees the same eye? The self. Although the body has gone so much change, the mind has gone, my outlook has changed a lot. It keeps changing all the time. My outlook, my thought process, what I think, my intellect. But the I is the same. When I see my old photograph as a baby, that's me, that's I. So the body, mind and intellect come from matter and go back into the matter. And it modifies, keeps modifying. We are familiar with the modification. We don't know the coming from the matter and the going into the matter. Or at least it's not drishtva. We know, we have read about it, we have heard about it, but it's not drishtva. We have not experienced it. The one who experiences the ultimate jnana. The self remains. The apparent self is called the jivatma, embodied, which is limited by the space, time, and object. The real self is called the paramatma, non-limited, not embodied. For example, the sun is the real sun, but the reflection of the sun in the river, in the lake, is apparent. But sometimes it looks absolutely real, like the sun. Similarly, the Paramatma that is reflected in the mind of the Jivatma is apparent. It is that conditioned sense of I. I am sitting, I had hair, I don't have hair today, I am reading, I am talking, I am happy, I am sad. All of that are conditions, verbalizations of the conditioned I. And birth and death are there only for this apparent I. And now Bhagavan continues in verse 21.
Veda vinashinam nityam ya enamajam avyayam katam sapurusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam.
Avinasham, indestructible. Nityam, eternal. Avyayam, inexhaustible. He who knows that the self is birthless, deathless, changeless. Such a person, katham kam ghatayati, how can this person cause to be killed? Katham kam hanti, how can such a person kill, is what Bhagavan is asking. The message for us is, neither does this person think of herself as the doer, nor does this person think of himself as the instigator. Suffering is not because of the body, but it is because of the identification, the abhimana. Bhagavan elaborates this multiple times, this concept. So this is the introduction, right? Chapter 2. Bhagavan talks about exactly the same in chapter 14 also. Chapter 14, verse 19, Bhagavan says, Nanyam gunebhya kartaram yada drashtanupashyati gunebhyascha param vekti madbhavam sodhigacchati. So when a person has the clarity that there is no other doer than the gunas, what are the gunas? We will come to it a little later in the next satsang. The three gunas, the tamas, the rajas and the sattva. They are the doer. Other than that, there is no other doer. When that clarity is there, how is that clarity there? Drishtan, yada drishtan. Again, see, experiential knowledge, aparoksha jnana. That drashta. And when that drashta is there, you know that the self is higher than the gunas. And the person who understands that the self is higher than the gunas, he attains my being, Bhagavan says here. My being is what? My being is without disturbance, without conflict, as is relevant to the current Arjuna situation. And then Bhagavan continues in verse 22.
Asamsi jivnani yata vihaya navani grahanati naruparani tata sharirani vihaya jivnanya anyani samyati navani dehi.
Just as a person casts off his worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the embodied self casts off worn out body, mind and intellect and takes on new ones. That is what this verse is talking. So one of the more often quoted verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Vamsasi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. So the self keeps changing bodies based on the use. So it is often misconstrued or argued by skeptics, either misconstrued or skeptics argue that even young bodies, they go away. What is the reason? Here, worn out does not mean, that old age, decay. Worn out means the use, the purpose for which the body, mind and intellect are there. That purpose. Like we change a car before it's worn out. The car is still running, the car is good, it can do another 1 lakh kilometers, but we buy one more car. Similarly, the purpose for which that embodied self is there, that purpose, the self has gotten over that purpose for which it was in that body. And now it needs another body. And Bhagavan continues in verse 28.
Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyaktanidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana.
Avyakta. Avyakta is unmanifest. Unmanifest when adini. Beings are unmanifest in the beginning. Bhutani, avyaktadini bhutani. Unmanifest in the beginning. And again, avyakta, unmanifest. Nidhanani eva. In the end also, after death also. In their end also, they are unmanifest. Nidhanani. Seem to be vyakta. Vyakta madhyani. They seem to be manifest in the middle, O Bharata. What then is there to grieve about? So the Bhutani or the beings are made from the Pancha Mahabhutas, which are the 5 elements. What are the 5 elements? Akasha, which is space, Vayu, which is air, Agni, that is fire, Jala, water, and Prithvi or earth, mud. So in the beginning, these bodies were not there, and in the end, they will not be there. In the middle, they are perceived in these 5 forms for a period of time, impermanent, transitory. And Bhagavan Sri Krishna thus addresses the delusion with respect to the nature of the self. And Bhagavan also repeatedly addresses Arjuna's grief. Natvam shochitum arhasi. He keeps saying that. What is there to grieve, O Arjuna? When the Paramatman does not die, nor is it born, so there is no need to grieve. And the Jivatman repeatedly dies and repeatedly comes again, is born again and again and again. It is only perceived to be existent. So what is the need to grieve? With this, Bhagavan concludes the teaching pertaining to the Atma Vidya, the knowledge of the self, and then begins to address the delusions with respect to duty. From the standpoint of the self, you ought not to grieve, because if you grieve, you are a fool. Something which is, not there in the beginning, not there in the end, and disappear. What are you going to, you ought not to grieve for it. He says you ought not to grieve. Yes, there can be grief, but you ought not to grieve. And later on in Bhagavad Gita, he talks about how to manage and how to make sure that you don't get into the state of grief. And from a standpoint of duty, there is no reason. Why is there no reason to grieve? Bhagavan continues in verse 31.
Swadharmamapi chavechya navikampitum dharmyadi shreyunyata kshatriyasya na vidyate.
Swadharmam, we talked about in the beginning when we started today's satsang. Own duty, my own duty. Dharmyadi, righteous duty. Shreya comes from Shreyas. We discussed that in the introductory satsang also. Right? Shreyas. What is Shreya? Shreya is that Uttamam, the higher, good. What is always good? Arjuna asked, no, tell me decisively what is good under all circumstances. That Shreyas. So, about your duty, when you are thinking about your duty carefully, you should not waver. When you are thinking carefully about your duty, you should not waver. And Bhagavan says, why? Because for a soldier, nothing is higher, nothing is more permanently good than a righteous war. For a soldier. And then he continues.
Yadrichya chopapannam swargadvaramapavratam sukhina kshatriya partha labhante yuddhamidrasham.
And why is, a righteous war the ultimate good for a soldier? Bhagavan explains this through this verse. Yadrichaya, something that has happened on its own, not because we caused it. Something that has a bigger element, a higher purpose, something beyond our control, happened on its own. And you are here blessed to be here, to be able to perform your duty. So nowadays, in COVID, I'd use the same example and I love it, okay? Earlier when we covered this chapter. In COVID, all of us we see, these poor farmers, they have to go to, localities, to residential complexes to deliver their produce. So let us say that a farmer is going in a cycle carrying, they come here. We have farmers market every week here in our complex also. So the farmer is cycling and going to sell his produce. And some of these farmers, they live on a daily. If I make today, sell today, eat today. Make tomorrow, sell tomorrow, eat tomorrow. And there is a strong headwind as he is cycling. Okay, it is becoming extremely difficult. He's carrying the weight of his produce. He needs to sell it. But if he doesn't sell it, his family is going to starve at home, at that night at least. So he's braving the conditions, the high wind. He's still going. And he is not only going, but he also feels good about it because he's struggling. But the sense of doing this duty, the sense of doing that righteous thing, I need to do this, I need to do this for a higher cause, for my family. That keeps him going. Not only does it keep him going, it makes him feel good also. Even though the wind is ferocious. For such a person who does the duty, does the righteous duty, for that person, Bhagavan says, Labhante yuddha midrisham Sukhina Kshatriya Partha. That Kshatriya. And Swargadwaram Apavritam. The doors to the heavens open automatically. For the person who is happily doing his duty, even though there are troublesome environment. So this farmer is struggling against the headwind. Suddenly a tractor comes in front, a slow-moving tractor, gives him the protection from the headwind. And he is cycling a lot more easily. These kind of good luck happens for people who work hard. The tide changes favorably for the people who are focused on performing their duty. And what if you are not? Bhagavan continues in verse 33.
Ata chetvamimam dharmyam samgramam na karishyasi tata swadharmam kirtim cha hidva papam avapsyasi.
But then if you do not fight a war that is righteous, Samgramam is the war, Dharmam is the righteous. If you do not fight, Hitva, if you have abandoned your duty, then Papam avapsyasi, you shall incur sin. So do not do your duty in a situation which is Yachreya, which is not anticipated, which we did not cause, but we have to do our duty, and all avenues are exhausted. Bhagavan talks about that. And you don't do it, then you shall incur sin. Swadharmam also means swa, my own, punya. Dharma is also punya, merit. Having abandoned, when somebody abandons one's punya, what do you get? You get papa. Now, and when you say all other avenues are exhausted in this case, and which is also relevant to us, Chanakya or Kautilya, ancient Indian philosopher, in his political treatise, it's called Arthashastra. And he wrote that around the 3rd century BC. He wrote about conflict resolution and how to resolve conflict. And he talks about Sama, which is conciliation, talks, having dialogue to solve the problem. And if that doesn't work, then Dana. Dana is giving gift, compensation. Or it is also sometimes Dama. Dama is to pay the dam, the price, the value. Either a gift or the value, paying it. That also doesn't resolve, then Bheda, using logic or even trickery to influence the mind of the person with whom you have conflict. Or in your own mind, to influence your own mind, doing Bheda, where there is conflict within. And if neither works, then Danda, which is use of force. So even within our own mind, we have to do all of this. We have to keep talking. When there is conflict, which we talked about, within our mind, within that body, mind, and intellect paradigm, that paradigm which is constricted, and the free-spirited soul, you do talk based on the whatever we are reading. Talk to ourselves, talk to our own mind. That doesn't work, try to, quote unquote, give gift or pay a value to your own self, to your own mind. Okay, if you be disciplined, I will reward you with so and so, like we do to a child, doing to yourself. If that also doesn't work, Bheda, logic, reasoning, trickery. And finally, if that doesn't work, Dhanda, punish. People, people who do sacrifice, people who do, deep, this thing, they punish themselves also. Like you have heard of sages who stand on one leg for a long period of time, right? Tapas. When you are in that, that's the word I was forgetting. People who do tapas, there is danda in tapas. So a righteous war is also something which is not for personal gain, but for collective good, for the welfare of society. Bhagavan will talk about welfare later. And for all of that, we must do our duty. Arjuna, the warrior, must fight. All of us must do our duties. And a duty must be performed in the timely manner. See, Bhagavan says, now, at this moment, what's wrong with you, Arjuna? Now, at this time of peril, now you're supposed to fight, you're having doubts. A child is crying, the mother needs to feed that child. The mother needs to feed that child before the child goes to sleep crying out of hunger. After the child has slept, then feeding the child is either not possible or is not useful. So timely is extremely important. And what is this papa, the sin? We do not know to go to hell after death to find out what is papa. You know, some of these concepts painted by religion are not relevant in spiritual progress. We do not need to do that. Papa is what? Papa is nothing but lack of punya. For example, if that farmer had not cycled against the headwind, what would have happened? He would have not gone and sold. He would have gone back home, probably thrown away his produce because anyway it is going to rot. Or maybe taken it back and he would have had today's produce and tomorrow's produce. But tonight his children are going to go to bed hungry. And all of that is going to cause what? A mental disturbance. That mental disturbance is sin. That is papa. So doing your duty removes papa. Because not doing the duty, escaping it, avoiding it, taking shortcuts will lead to papa later. At that time we may not be aware, but it does lead to papa later. Not only that, he's worked so hard to make that produce. So much of merit. That produce itself signifies, you know, when other people eat it, they are going to feel good about it. It's going to make them healthy. His children are going to be fed because of being able to sell it. All that merit will get washed away. So disturbance and losing of merit, both of these are sin. And having wiped out your own fame, your own merit by not doing your duty, a regret dawns within. And that regret, you know, comes through either bad action, performing bad action, or omitting good action. Both of them can lead to that regret. Additionally, having abandoned this kind of a merit, this kind of a fame, that also results in dishonor. The wife is going to yell at them, couldn't you have gone? I mean, you're talking about wind. Don't you know that your children will? So the wife is going to dishonor the farmer when he goes back home. Akirtim. Akirtim is criticism, insult, infamy, dishonor. And Bhagavan continues in verse 37.
Hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshyasi mahim tasmad uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya kritnishchayah.
So Bhagavan says that if you are slain here, so Arjuna talks about it, you know, it's better to die in the battlefield than kill my own. See, if you fight the war, if you do your duty and get slain, then you shall attain heaven. Victorious, you will enjoy the pleasures of being the king in future. Therefore, O son of Kunti, get up with a resolve to fight. For Arjuna, Bhagavan is saying, go fight, get up and fight. But for all of us, the relevance of Bhagavad Gita even today, for all of us, it is a divine call to human beings to discard all these melancholy complaints. Oh, this is a problem, that is a problem, the headwind is there, I can't do this, you know, COVID is there because of which I have this problem. Discard all of these mental objections that are a part of life's challenges and come forward and play the game of life as best as you can. And one of the best ways to play the game of life is to perform your duty, this game of life, with a firm determination to strive, to win, and to succeed. That is the message. And how Bhagavan gives that to us is in the next verse, which is 38.
Sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labhau jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujjasva naivam papamavapsyasi.
So the world, the environment is not made like a bed of roses for you. There will be sukha and dukha, pleasure and pain. There will be labha and alabha, profit and loss. There will be jaya and ajaya, victory and defeat. This is all part of life. It's a game. Having made yourself, becoming balanced in these extreme situations. What are the extreme situations? Sukha dukha, labha labha, jaya jaya. These are the extremities. In those extremities, being balanced. Same kritva. Kritva. Make yourself balanced. It won't come on its own. You have to make yourself. And then yujyasva, engage. In what? Yudhaya. In your battles. After having balanced in these, becoming balanced, making yourself balanced in these extremities, engage in your own battles. And when you do that, naivam papam avapsisi, you shall not incur any sin. You shall not incur any mental disturbances. So plants, they react. So if sun is there, the sunflower blooms. If the sun is not there, the sunflower shrinks. Animals respond. I call my pet Simba, come here, he will come. And they also act. Animals act on their own also. It is man who can work. And what is work? Work is intelligent action, not just any kind of action. Intelligent action is work. Taking karma to karma yoga. How do you do that? Ishwararpana buddhi, prasada buddhi. Only action is based on impulse. But intelligent action is based on Ishwararpana buddhi and prasada buddhi. And expressing one's impulse, Swami Chinmayananda ji used to say, expressing one's impulse is the dignity of an animal. The glory of a human being is to use her discriminative capacity and work. Act intelligently, keeping in context, keeping in mind the outcome of the work, keeping in mind what the duty is. Now this discriminative capacity, what is that? The discriminative, see, we have beehives, we have cobwebs, beautiful architectural marvels of these creatures, the bees and the spiders. But have they changed in centuries? They are the same. A bee 50 million years ago did the same beehive. A spider 100 million years ago did the same cobweb. Because they act on impulse. It comes from the impulse of action. But human beings, how has architecture changed of what we build, our homes, our palaces, our architectural wonders, all of that. That comes through this discriminative capacity. It gives a creative turn to the intellect. And that is what differentiates human beings. All these three possibilities, they will come and go. They are part and parcel of life. The three possibilities are what? The extremities. Sukha dukkha, labha labho, jaya jaya. And they are representative of so many other extremes that we go through in our lives. Maintaining tranquility, maintaining balance, being equipoised through this is the creative, discriminative action of a human being. And once you do that, after that, it's not over. You have to enter the battle. It's not say, oh, I am equipoised, I'm going to sit in pranayama. Then you're fooling yourself and the world. Then you enter the battlefield, the battles of your life. And when you do that, naivam papam avapsisi. The disturbances go away. Without success, there is no meaning in failure. And without failure, what is success? Nothing. So we have to observe life in totality, in the holistic form of sukha and dukkha, jaya and ajaya. Both taken together. Overall, every stage of your life, look at the life in a holistic manner. All the wins and the losses. And realize, count the blessings. And have I lived my life to my truthful convictions? That intuition that Arjuna felt, that something is not okay. Bhagwan, please, you know what, you please tell me and tell me decisively. From that internal conviction, have I done my duty? Nobody has to tell you, nobody has to, guide you, give you a certificate, nothing. Your internal conviction. And when you do that, you will live life like swimming in an ocean. You will play with the waves. If the wave is higher, you will duck in. If the wave is lower, you will dance over it. And doing it as worship, when we devote it to the Lord, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, then that gives that sense of happiness. If things are good, if there is sukha, you are happier and you are experiencing that joy and the happiness. If there is dukkha, you have the resolve. Both ways it is helping. And in this manner, Sri Bhagavan, he concludes the teachings from the standpoint of Swadharma or duty. So we saw that Bhagavan talked about Atmagyana, Atmavidya and Swadharma Vidya. And now in the next satsang, we will go through what he refers to and what he teaches us in terms of the yoga, the perfection. Thank you. Hari Om.
Om Asado Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you. Hari Om. So next satsang, we'll finish chapter 2 revision. And then, like I said, the 3-week break. And when we resume on Jan 6, I would like to start with chapter 6 and finish it. Any thoughts?
Just a thought. I don't know if I'm correct in what I'm saying, but correct me if I'm wrong. A couple of days back when we were doing one of the satsangs, you said that God doesn't keep account of your papa and punya. He doesn't say anything like this. But here he is saying that if you don't perform your duty, it is a sin. And he doesn't keep an account of our sins. So how come he's talking about it?
Yeah, that he's just talking about it. No, he's not keeping count of it and using it to. He's saying what? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
He's telling us to do it. He's telling us not to do sin. So he's keeping an account. That means he knows you're doing a sin and now you're doing the right thing. Now you're doing the wrong thing. So he's keeping an account actually. Well, that's why I said I'm not sure if it's a right question, but
see, keeping count is when you have your child and when your child is not studying. Your child is supposed to study from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Your child is not. Your child is supposed to do Mind Spark from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Not done. Okay, you have not done. One Monday not done, Tuesday not done, Wednesday not done, Friday not done, Saturday not done. 5 days not done. On Sunday, you say this entire week, 5 days you have not done. That is keeping count. But telling your child that if you do this, you will feel good about yourself, you will learn math better, you will learn science better. If you don't do it, then you will not score well in your exams. If you don't score well in your exams, you will feel bad. Forget about everything else. I will not say anything to you. I promise you I will not scold you, but you yourself will feel bad. So Bhagavan did the latter. He does not do the former. So doing That is the difference.
Yeah, but then like, yeah, okay, he's driving you to do, he's encouraging you to do the right thing, but okay, he's not counting.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
That is why he said, in spite of all the sinning, if you do, in the end, you just do the right thing, all are washed out.
Yeah, but JV sir is saying that Bhagavan, yes, Bhagavan does say that. He says even in your life, if you have done a lot of sins, but in the end, if you do the right thing, the previous past sins are washed off. But Bhagavan also says, later on he'll say in chapter 14 and all, if you have done whatever you have done, the way you have lived your life, in the end also you will be like that only. The last thought, Bhagavan says that the last thought determines the future. The last thought before you give up the embodied determines the next birth. And the last thought is determined by how you lived your life.
So basically, you are answerable for your own karmas. You don't have to think about Papa and Punya. You will feel guilty yourself. You have done something wrong. Maybe not at that point of time, but certainly later on.
I think it is somewhere mentioned that like what you're saying is at the last moment of your life, even one word of Om, if you are speaking and going with that, is it you get mukti after that. I mean, that's what it says. I think Gita may somewhere it is mentioned that one last word is going to clear you of all the things you have done in your life.
But
One
it
moment.
also says in Gita that, yes, that is true. But it also says I will not use the other 4-letter word, but all your life you're saying damn, 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 damn. Okay. In the end, damn will only come. Oh, hey Ram will not come, or Om will not come. If you're all your life, if you're saying hey Ram, hey Ram, hey Ram, Om, Om, then in the end it will come.
No, it's not like that. It comes. I've seen it. It comes. Whatever you do in your entire life, at the last minute, you will know what all has gone wrong, and you can see it. Okay, I don't want to take this further.
Experiential, your drishta,
Yeah. It's
drishta knowledge of yours. Okay,
yes.
I accept it. See, the point is that no. See, I'm just referring to, I don't know what you're talking about, but I think I can understand. See, we see people in various ways, okay? Our experience with people that doesn't mean that the person is all the time thinking wrong, For all you know, the person may have been thinking the right things also for a good period of time, number one. Number two is, my experience with a human being is 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But the human being lived 85 years, 90 years, 70 years. So maybe those 10 years were different from the remaining 60 years. So you don't know, we don't know, we should figure out our own journey, that's enough. See, if I'm playing cricket or if I'm playing tennis, if I keep practicing the right shot, then when I play also it will come. If I'm practicing the wrong shot, how can I expect that when I play magically a right shot will come? And fundamentally, it's good message, for all of us. While we are learning and living, till now we have done, we have used damn. Let us try and use Ram from now on.
Sure. Kushagra has written something, Srini.
It was just relating to the same reference.
Okay,
there's an old story about a guy called Ramnath, Srini. And they say that Ramnath raises his 4 kids and then the kids take care of Ramnath. So basically, at the end of the day, it all comes, if it's goodness, goodness yields goodness. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But by the way, we have gone a little bit on a tangent. This all comes later in Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 2 is very clear. Chapter 2, first Bhagavan talks about the impermanence of the quote-unquote jiva or body, mind, intellect. It's not nitya. And then he says something which was not there in the beginning, not there in the end. Why are you worrying about that middle, that manifestation aspect in the middle? Then he says, so that way he gives us the vidya about the self. What is permanent, what is not permanent. Then he talks about duty. That come what may, whatever the conditions, know what your duty is, and your inside intuition will tell you what your duty is, and do it, whatever may be the difficult conditions. And now he'll talk about the yoga part of it. And he says, remain balanced. So before he talks about the yoga, he says, in the extremities, be balanced. And while after being balanced, from that position of being balanced, that stronghold of stability of balance, fight your battles. It's a hard message on how to live life. Anything else? Okay, thank you. Hari Om. We'll meet next Saturday.